Intro. The original Halloween is a movie that made itself a classic by defining what slasher movies could be like if written correctly. It's also the movie that started one of the more classic horror franchises in history, in film history at least. Everyone knows what Halloween is because it's a holiday, but also because everyone who celebrates it basically knows who Michael Myers is to some extent. It's a Hot Topic staple, other than The Nightmare Before Christmas, and for good reason. It's the thing you'll see at all the scary conventions and all of that, and Ice Nine Kills probably definitely has a song on it. It's one of the classics that most people who are into horror just kind of jam down your throat, insisting that you have to watch it or you're not a real horror fan, obviously. It's all gaslighting, but every year the Halloween season comes around, and it's cool to see everyone decorate and stuff. But first, let's take a look at what the story in the movie is like. It's 1963, and it's about to be Halloween. This is a long time ago, and we see a 6-year-old murder his sister with a knife. That little child being Michael Myers. Then, 15 years later, in the year that the movie releases in, shocker, 1979, Michael's psychologist goes to get him for his court hearing, but can't really find where he is. Not that great when a murderer is kind of on the loose. But Michael's actually driving away in the car after the nurse, Loomis, came with runs away. Michael steals the car and goes to Haddonfield, which is the town he killed his sister in. When Michael arrives at the town, he kills people to get his iconic outfit and mask. The mask he just steals, but that doesn't matter. Which one's worse? But after Michael stalks Lori throughout the day because she dropped off a key at the murder site home, which is his childhood home, Lori is no average girl. She's our final girl, so of course she notices him. But Lori's friends, Annie and Linda, basically just try to gaslight her by being like, "No, he's not there." Loomis comes into Haddonfield and sees that Michael has stolen his sister's tombstone from the cemetery. I don't know how he does that, but sure, let's go along with that. This is where Loomis meets Annie's dad, aka Lee, who is the sheriff, and they look for Michael together. Both Annie and Lori have to babysit, but Annie wants to go primal with her boyfriend. So what does Annie do? Annie babysits the kid for a little bit before leaving them with Lori, because it won't matter to her. It's also around this time that Tommy, the kid Lori is watching, tells Lindsay that he saw the boogeyman, which is just Michael. Annie dies, and she enters her car because Michael was hiding in there, and whoa, dead. Linda arrives with her boyfriend to check up on Annie, and she and Bob, her boyfriend, go primal. I guess that's just a common theme at this time. Afterwards, Bob goes downstairs to grab a beer, but is pinned to a wall by Michael in a memorable kill. Michael pretends to be Bob in a ghost costume when returning to Linda, which causes her to strip and then get annoyed at the ghost, which is when she calls Lori, but whoops! Strangulation. Linda's dead, but don't fret, Fletchling. Loomis discovers the car Michael stole. Lori wonders what happens over at the house, so she checks on it and sees all her friends dead. Just dead. Michael attacks Lori to, somewhat good extent, but she's able to escape. She runs back to the house she was babysitting at as Michael chases her. She tries to call for help, but guess what? The phone line is dead. You can't call anyone now. Michael attacks her again, but she stabs him with a knitting needle. Lori hides in the closet and then attacks Michael when he reappears. She sends the kids off to call for help as Michael strangles her, casual like Thursday. Loomis shoots Michael and he falls out of the house, but when he goes to check on him, he isn't there. The guy is gone. Michael Myers is back on the loose, but all we can hear is his breathing as he's still out there, and his iconic theme. Roll credits and all that pizzazz. The movie's finished. As Halloween is one of the classic horror movies that came out before Scream, it had to take itself seriously for a horror movie. It did this well and was one of the few movies that was able to define what horror movies and what slasher movies were for a little bit of time. The movie that was able to scare a lot of people through the suspense and everything it had. When we look at how suspense is done in this movie, we can see it through the different ways Michael Myers is shown. There are two ways this is done. The perspectives we see from him, but also the shots of him standing and stalking Laurie throughout the movie. It shows a menacing feature that isn't in a lot of movies where the killer lurks in the shadows. It gives the movie a big suspense of, what would happen if Michael catches up to Laurie, but it looms in the back of your mind. It's a good way to scare someone and have them lean forward in their seats, like the lock-in position, and make them eat their popcorn more and more. Audiences get scared way more when they're fully invested in a movie and leaning forward. So a jump scare could actually make someone jump from the scare. That's just human psychology. That's just the name. People think with their brains, and they get scared with their brains. The jump scares, of course, do use the same thing Scream does, with how it does loud noises alongside the scare. It makes sense why it does this with things like music, because it's sudden. It's just a good way to scare people like that. When things are sudden, you get more scared. I think we can agree on that. If you're walking down the street and somebody jumps at you and robs you, it would scare you, I'm assuming. It's sudden, and it's something you weren't expecting. That's how they get you in the scary movie industry. They are the person robbing you on the street, and of your money in the theater. But that is mainly at the end of the movie. We can also talk about how the movie actually shows Michael in the background leading up to the end of the movie. The long shots of him standing behind a bush or something like it, and then disappearing a second later. It shows that he's lurking in the shadows, and that he is a force to be reckoned with. We know his backstory, or part of it, in this movie, so we can somewhat piece together the motives, as he's not a total mystery to us. His actions are a mystery to us because we don't know what he'll do. That's the point of a murderer movie. Make the murderer seem sporadic in the little time frame you have, because that's what a movie like this has over something like true crime, for example. In true crime, you have a lot of time to tell the viewer a motive and or their past, so the viewer can piece together something cohesive enough to make a story out of it. You have a lot of time to do this. You have a lot of time to establish what you want, the viewer to know. And so when the murder, happens in the show, or whatever crime happens in true crime that you're watching, you can see the timeline and fully see what happened in that person's, mind of life. You can visualize all the emotions, all that. Now, that is something you can't do in less than 3 hours, or in this case, 2 hours. You need time to build all these events and connections, but you also need to show a little bit about the character's past if you want to add that, knowledge to the viewer's mind. That's what they do in this movie. They showed the inciting incident, quote unquote. That's one of the words you can learn in English, literature. You learn that about Michael Myers and why he's in that psych ward to begin with. It also lets us know he's insane, but that he's a human behind the mask. That mask that is at every Hot Topic store across the country in the month of October has somewhat of a human behind it, and he has a troubled past. This is also his motivation for coming back to Haddonfield and all of that, because he has a close connection to his sister. His inside motives are unknown mainly, but we do know that it has to do with something relating to his sister, which is why he stalks Lori after she drops a key off at the house. It's his motive that exists, but it's really up to interpretation. It's enough to make person 1 and person 2 make totally different stories about why Michael Myers did what he did. You get the same idea at the end of what the idea is about in a way. You see what you do. You get the idea somewhat at the end, but you can interpret it different ways. But there's also the idea of what evil looks like. Pure evil. Pure, bloody, gory evil. Like the people who rob elderly homes. Or really, the game devs that always put the Gooner games on the new and trending section of Steam. But anyways, you can think of a motive, and that's what we like to do. But it is really more of the idea of pure evil for killing his sister. A lot of people think in the way that if you can't justify something, it's inherently bad. Now, usually we have a negative bias in our brains that tells us more to look at negative things more than positive parts. But in this situation, it also comes down to trying to make reason of something. We want to make everything make sense, because in our mind, that's how it sits well. If something doesn't sit well, like a murder, for example, of course, we always see murder as bad unless we're psychotic, of course. But usually when we reach true crime, it helps us see the reason why and make it somewhat easier to see the perspective of the murderer, which is why it's so interesting. But in terms of Michael Myers, where his actions are mainly motivated by evil, it makes us more afraid of him in a way. Because without a motive, there is no end to the murder. We've seen in the movie that he's willing to snap on anyone, even if he doesn't know them. This is seen as like Lori, because all she did was drop a single key off at his childhood home. Like, she didn't really care that much, bro. Bank is bank, but in this case, it also is what causes Lori to be caught up in this mess. But it also begs the question on what Michael would do if other people walked into the house for the supposed, like, open house, the touring of it. Would he have stalked and at least tried to kill them as well? Evil never stops at just one person when it's trying to kill. So there's no telling what the limits would be like here. It's unpredictable, and there's no path for redemption when you don't have a justification. That's why it's so scary, but also because this was back when horror movies weren't everywhere and a half. It was a more rare genre, so it could be taken more seriously back then, especially with this movie, which kind of follows the rules that are mentioned in the Scream movie, because this movie was one of the movies that inspired a lot of other horror movies. But also the menacing tone the movie has with the long shots it does and all that helps make the movie's atmosphere more spooky in a way. Even not including Michael Myers. The nighttime shots give a good atmosphere because it's nighttime. You get scared during the nighttime. I do too, because the night also brings a sense of unknown and fear in the people. And that's that's one of the natural causes everyone has, the unknown. That's why people don't walk down alleyways at night or are more cautious when they're outside at night. It's hard to see what's around except for the lights and all of that. Whatever's on your street. The sidewalk is reduced to nothing other than street lights, so some people use that to just take advantage and rob people and stuff, which makes people more nervous that they might become a victim to it. The night in this movie is shot in a similar way, since really all the lights we see are the two houses at the end that Lori and Annie are staying in. There's not really any street lamps at all, so light doesn't really catch our eye like that. Somebody could be walking down and we would barely see them. That's how dark it is. I mean, you can see inside the houses just fine. No need to worry about that. This setting also helps make Michael Myers seem scarier because his jumpsuit is a darker color, so he blends in more with the night. You can still see his outline in the mask, especially the mask, since in this movie it's actually new and all of that, considering we see him steal it. It makes it more menacing. That's also how you make anything scary, by not being able to see them just because of the idea of the unknown. It's blank, it's dark, anything can happen. Close the book on that one. And that's specifically why the last sequence is scary. That and also how the kills act as a trail, sort of, from Annie to Bob to Linda as Laurie discovers what happened. We know what happens because we were watching the movie, but it's worse seeing the aftermath. Because when you see what happens, you're mainly in shock if it's the first time you've seen it. Like, gasp, audible gasp, lean forward, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. You're not expecting it, so you're kind of still comprehending it somewhat rather than seeing what happens afterwards. You ever spill water on the floor, and then you're like, wow, this is awful. But then you go back after and you see it's a spill on the floor. That's what it is in a way. Just, more extreme because people are dead in this movie. It's like looking at the stain of another person's decisions and, murder after they already do it. It's the water. You see the stain is way worse than you thought it was. And that's why, even though we saw the killings happen, it can still be disturbing to see the aftermath. It's more of a, we know what happened, and now we're just kind of looking back at it. Also, Laurie's main reaction is what makes it scary. She doesn't know what happened, and we do. So she's a raw reaction in a way, as she's hit with like one of her friends being murdered, then another, and then another. And that's like the scary part of it, because the movie is able to do all of it so well with suspense, and making you want to lean forward in your seat. Now, we all know the iconic song from the soundtrack, the Michael Myers track that is used at the houses that set up way too much for Halloween. Like, wait, you buy how much in decorations? But anyways, the rising notes, one by one by one, and the menacing tone of it make it scary enough that it helps make the movie scarier. It actually helps because this is also what's called a motif in music, which is used commonly. A motif, as learned in school a long time ago, is basically the theme song of a character or an entity. It's the motif for Michael Myers, so it's one of the common themes throughout the movie. This is also used in the title sequence, where the pumpkin is being carved one by one, and also gives this motif throughout the whole movie, because it's what you open with and what we close with. Since we hear part of it when Michael Myers disappears, it's a constant that adds eeriness to the movie. Plus, you can play it on its own, which adds to it. I've also heard people have it as their ringtone, which, is kind of scary when you're at work and stuff, and bam! Like the ringtone plays. So it's not a super rare song to spot in the wild, but you can find it. It is recognizable, which is good, and what you want from music in a movie. So it's not filler, because the music actually helps make scenes, and isn't like, I need background noise. Background noise, please. It's not like that, luckily. But we can also see what reviewers thought of the movie if we want to. The movie got a lot of good reviews, like a 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd, a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb. It also has a 90 on Metacritic, which is insane considering they're usually the lowest crowd out of everyone. This was impressively also done on a low budget of about like $300 to $325,000. But with such a low budget, it made a lot of money in the box office. Specifically, it made $70 million, which makes it a really successful horror movie, but also a good independent film. Considering the movie was filmed in 20 days, was at small budget. This is what like everybody, this is what a film student wants to be. They want to be this story. So, congrats to Halloween for being the film student mantra of what you want to be. Halloween's a good movie. It doesn't need to be Halloween season or October to make it good. Mainly, if you like horror movies, I would say you would like it, but you've probably seen it already if you like horror movies. So, like, I would be surprised if you haven't, I'm gonna be honest. You should watch it if you haven't. And for the best effect, you should watch it during October because that's the spooky month. That's how you form your own opinion, if you believe in the First Amendment after all. But I would give the movie a 9.3 out of 10, which would, in my list, would put it between Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and The Social Network. That's what I thought of the movie, and you definitely have thoughts on the movie, because I know you do. You're watching a video. So, if you want to, you can comment them down below. Only if you want. It's interesting to see people's thoughts. But that's about it. Please like and subscribe. Pretty please.